What is up, guys? My name is RJ, this is The Secret Stacks, and today I want to have a little bit of a discussion video about a couple movies I've watched lately. Everything Everything and Me Before You. In particular, their disability rep and also how different genres have different responsibilities when dealing with certain issues. But before we do that, I just sort of want to lay out my own personal style of dealing with problematic books or problematic conversations. Just because you may have had a different experience reading or watching either of these, or just if we have a difference of opinion, does not change my opinion about you in any way. In my experience, there's two things that we absolutely can't control, and that's things that we like and things that hurt us. They're so deeply personal, and there can be a cross-section, a Venn diagram of the two. In fact, I really enjoyed certain aspects of these movies, but other things had me shaking my head, just being like, what? It was a really interesting experience watching these pretty much back to back. Everything is out in movie theaters right now. Me Before You is on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's on anything else, but that's where I watched it. And it really, doing it back to back, really set up a stark contrast in how two different authors, two different filmmakers, two different genres tackle similar but not the same issues. The one thing that struck me right off the bat, and that's a sad sort of funny, is that these two very popular stories about quote-unquote disability aren't actually about disabled characters. Now here's where we're going to get into spoilers if you want to check out, but in Everything, the main character Maddie does not end up having SCID. And in Me Before You, the story's not actually about Will, it's about Daenerys Targaryen. I think it's an unfortunate but not at all rare trend to see these disabilities being used as essentially plot devices for these characters. And while I classify both as having bad disability rep, I will say there's a difference between bad and dangerous. And a lot of that has to do with the intended audience. Me Before You by Jojo Moyes is set up as a contemporary romance or contemporary self-discovery story. That's exactly who the intended audience is, able-bodied woman. They connect with Daenerys Targaryen as a character versus Will almost like a Mount Everest obstacle self-discovery journey to learn from. Is that right? Is it healthy? No. But again, it's not totally unexpected. And generally, when you get to sort of adult reads like this, this may be sort of subtly reaffirming negative messages about disability, but ultimately I don't think it's going to drastically change anybody's mind. Contrast this with a YA novel like Everything Everything. In this one, the main character Maddie ostensibly is the one with a disability, and we end up thinking that for the majority of the novel or the movie. So this does two things. It sets up expectations that as a reader that we can connect with this disabled character, and then that rug gets pulled out from under us. But also this disorder, SCID, can be a metaphor, stand-in, an entry point for just not this disorder, but a multitude of different similar or also just similar in spirit disabilities or challenges that YA readers can latch onto and make this connection. And this is where the same bad rep and negative reinforcement of stereotypes crosses the line from unfortunate to dangerous. I mean, let's talk about the tagline right off the bat. The only risk is not taking one, which is just so patently absurd. I can name 1,000 other risks, but how about the very theoretically real risk of stepping outside and dying? That seems like a pretty big risk to me. And that's where this story, this romance, starts to turn toxic, because it essentially is saying that Maddie's life before she takes this risk isn't worth it. Similar to how in Me Before You it sets up Will's life as not being worth it. But again, there's a big difference between a 35-year-old adult making those personal decisions about his own health and a teenager who doesn't have full agency or understanding. And just the fact that Maddie takes this risk and having these faux consequences is really just terrible reinforcement of this idea that a lot of people with disability fight against, and that their issues aren't real And just if they do push themselves, if they do sort of get out of this mindset, just this, it's so frustrating in a sense because this is something that everyone who has any sort of health issue goes through. Just the belief, both in yourself and from other people, doctors, just it is a fundamental challenge for people with disabilities. To have it used so flippantly as a plot point is frustrating, but that's not the biggest issue because my frustration on the grand scheme of things, again, really equates to my experience with Me Before You. It is what it is. I'm pretty secure with myself and my disability. That doesn't really affect me negatively beyond an emotion. But for people who are new to their disability, struggling with their disability, young, that's where it becomes dangerous. For me, I see a lot of parallels between Everything, Everything and a lot of the discussion and controversy around 13 Reasons Why. And while they're very different and deal with very different subject matters, the risks based on the target audience is still the same. I'm trying in my head to imagine these as adult stories with adult age characters, and I don't think that an adult 13 Reasons Why or an adult Everything, Everything would be better at all. There's still, the fundamental problems are still there, but they would be less dangerous. And that's where really I fundamentally believe as a YA author that you do have an added responsibility to your readership to tackle things in a more careful, nuanced, skilled way. I know it's just not young adults reading young adult novels, obviously, but it's at that intended audience. You do capture a huge base from that. And again, your first responsibility, your last responsibility is to that group. But I'm curious what you guys think. These are just my off-the-cuff thoughts. Really, the reason that this all started is because I wanted to watch Daenerys Targaryen and Finnick Odair from the Hunger Games in a movie. That's really it. And then it sort of morphed into just something didn't sit right with me, and those two movies sat in my head for a while, and this is what I came up with. But if you think differently, I'm very curious. Let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, see ya.